He saved the exiled princess years ago. Now she stands in his path with a gilded blade. The laser torch sputtered out, spitting sparks that guttered in the darkness, and Jason Hale's world narrowed to the low, steady hum of backup power echoing through the Helix Array's core archive. He pressed his back against the cold alloy wall, adrenaline thrumming, and slipped through the jagged opening he'd carved into the vault's perimeter. The space beyond was awash in pulsing red emergency light, each heartbeat of color etching his silhouette in stark relief and painting the banks of memory shards and data cores in bloody hues. He landed softly, knees flexing, sidearm raised in a grip drilled by years of covert ops. His breath came quick and shallow, fogging in the chill. The air was charged with static and something else, something alive. He advanced, boots silent against the composite floor, senses straining for any sign of movement. A subtle shift in the gloom, a ripple against the tide of shadows, made him pause. From the darkness, a figure emerged. Tall, regal, skin the shade of midnight, dusted with bioluminescent gold patterns that shimmered beneath the crimson glow. Her hair spilled like wildfire, a brilliant red mane framing a face both alien and achingly beautiful. Elongated ears peeked from the tangle, and her amber eyes blazed with an inner fire, locking onto Jason with an intensity that pinned him in place. A sleek tail, the color of night, flicked behind her, and her armor caught the failing light, gleaming with intricate sigils he recognized from Helion royal archives. Jason's weapon tracked her, but the certainty in his grip faltered. His pulse pounded with a strange, disorienting déjà vu, a memory skittering at the edges of consciousness, just out of reach. She regarded him, blade raised in a duelist's stance, eyes narrowed in wary calculation. Her nostrils flared, as if searching for a scent, and for a heartbeat, her expression wavered, confusion flickering behind the fire. "You're not supposed to be here," Jason muttered, voice rough with tension and something else. Grief, maybe, or hope. The words came out hoarse, colored by the warmth and spice that suddenly filled the air. A scent that struck him with almost physical force. His mind reeled, heart hammering, as memories threatened to surge forth. Her gaze sharpened, resolve hardening her features. Without warning, she sprang forward, movement swift and fluid as water, blade flashing toward his side. Instinct, not training, saved him. He twisted, the weapon's arc slicing the air where he'd just stood. His pistol clattered away into the darkness, lost among the debris. She pressed the attack, blade hissing through the air, forcing him into a desperate tumble behind a pillar of shattered data drives. Her tail lashed past, close enough that he felt the heat. He regained his feet, knife drawn, and faced her as she advanced. Their blades met with a hiss, edges catching the flickering red light. They were close, so close he could feel the radiant warmth of her skin, see the subtle shift of gold markings as her muscles tensed. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating, surprise mingling with something deeper, a recognition that made the world tilt. They froze, blades locked, faces inches apart, breaths mingling in the cold air. Time seemed to stutter, and then stop. Abruptly, she withdrew, blade lowering, her tail trembling in an echo of the uncertainty that flickered across her face. She gestured toward the glowing archive console, no longer the predator, but something more fragile, her confidence replaced by a strange, haunted uncertainty. Jason straightened, wary, but a thread of certainty pulled him forward. She would not harm him now. He watched her slip into the shadows, silent as a dream. At the exit, she paused, casting a glance over her shoulder that held volumes, meaning, longing, regret, and none of it menace. Then she was gone, swallowed by darkness, leaving behind a silence broken only by the hum of dying machinery and the lingering scent of home. His hands shook as he gathered the Helion files, fingers clumsy on the cracked console. The data scrolled before him, But his mind was elsewhere, on the phantom sensation of her heat, the memory of that scent, and the way her name hovered on the tip of his tongue. He hesitated, then pulled up the access logs. There it was, her signature, bold and defiant. Kyra Starflare, independent operative, former Princess Kyra of House Astralis, presumed dead. Jason sat back on his haunches, shock numbing him. The name thundered through him, a storm of loss and hope and questions he could not bear to face. He stared at the console until the lights flickered and faded, then made his way back to his ship, mind whirling with visions of amber eyes and crimson hair. Hours later, aboard the battered hull of the Marauder's Grace, Jason drifted through the motions of routine, stowing files, resetting navigation, replaying the encounter in his mind on an endless loop. He couldn't shake her image, nor the echo of her presence, fierce and vulnerable all at once. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, a proximity alert blinked on the console. A soft chime, then nothing. The alarm died before he could react, and Jason spun, muscles tensed, hand hovering over his holster. In the corridor beyond the cockpit, a shadow moved, large, feline, mesmerizing. She crouched there, larger than before, every line of her predatory and graceful. The golden patterns beneath her armor shifted in hypnotic ripples, as if alive. Her tail traced slow arcs behind her, steady and deliberate, while her amber eyes watched him, curious and unafraid. Jason held still, torn between fight and something else entirely. She stepped forward, hesitation in every movement, and he saw the subtle tremor in her hands as she pressed one to her temple, grimacing as if in pain. A wave of compassion, fierce and sudden, drove him forward. He moved closer, drawn by instinct and the aching, haunting spice of her scent. She looked down at her trembling hands, surprise flitting across her face, the mask of fierceness cracking to reveal raw vulnerability beneath. Jason reached out, slow and gentle, fingers barely brushing her cheek. She leaned into the touch, a soft, trilling sound escaping her lips. Her eyes fluttered shut as she pressed closer, palms splayed over his heart, tracing delicate patterns that sent electric heat through him. The moment stretched, fragile and infinite. "What's your name?" he whispered, barely trusting his voice. "Kira." The name hit him like a shockwave, memories flaring, red hair tangled in midnight sheets, glowing eyes filled with trust, gentle hands, and unbearable loss. "Jason," she breathed, voice trembling, threaded with longing and sorrow. She swayed, and he caught her, arms closing around her instinctively. She fit perfectly against him, her head beneath his chin, tail curling around his leg. For a breathless moment, they clung to each other, the past crashing over them in waves. Her words were muffled against his chest, weighted with grief and fury and a desperate hope. "They stole everything from us." Jason woke to muffled cries piercing the thin silence of the cramped sleeping alcove. The ship's systems pulsed quietly in standby, a faint amber glow outlining every seam in the battered hull. He blinked groggily, the fog of restless dreams retreating as a sharp, desperate sound cut through the dark. He turned toward the source. Kyra, curled in the far corner, a tangle of fiery hair half obscuring her face, tail wound tight around her legs, claws carving shallow furrows into the cold metal plating. She shook violently, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The ship's walls seemed to close in, amplifying the raw, animal terror that rolled off her in waves. Jason eased from his bunk, careful not to startle her further. He crouched low, hands open, and approached with slow, deliberate steps. "Kira," he said softly, voice threading through the darkness. She jerked, a strangled sound caught in her throat. Her hand lashed out, claws flashing. He caught her wrist, fingers wrapping around delicate bones, feeling the tremor that ran through her. Her eyes snapped open, pupils blown wide, amber burning with confusion and fear. She stared at him, Unseeing, chest heaving, tears slipped down her cheeks, catching the ship's dim light, leaving silvery tracks across blue-black skin. "So much pain! They took you away!" she choked, the words cracked and raw, torn from someplace far deeper than a dream. Jason felt the weight of her agony settle over him like a shroud. He couldn't dismiss it as a nightmare, not when his own sleep was broken by images of restraints, neural dampeners searing his skull, and the memory of watching strands of red hair disappearing into a stasis pod as he screamed and fought invisible bonds. He loosened his grip and slid down to sit beside her, close but not touching. Her tail uncoiled in slow, shuddering waves, the tension bleeding away as she came back to herself. She sat up, running a shaking hand through her tangled mane, pushing it back to reveal a thin, pale scar etched along her scalp. Surgical, recent. It glowed faintly, an accusation and a warning. Kira drew her knees up, arms wrapped around them, head bowed as she tried to steady her breathing. Jason watched her in silence, his own heart pounding with old, unhealed wounds. Fragments surfaced. Flash flood memories. The two of them running through a garden of blue fire lilies. Laughter echoing under the twin moons. Alarms suddenly blaring. His hands sticky and stained with her blood as he tried to hold her together. "Astral blooms," Jason murmured, the words tumbling out unbidden, soft and uncertain. He wasn't sure where the memory came from, only that it belonged to them, woven into the fabric of who they were. "I remember weaving them into your hair. You laughed." She looked up at him, eyes shining with tears and recognition. For a heartbeat, the air between them shimmered with shared pain and longing. "Those were my favorites," Kira whispered, voice trembling. "You called them my crown." Her fingers found his, locking together with a desperate familiarity that sent heat shooting through him. Her touch was lightning, burning away the last of his doubts. She shivered at the contact, a gasp escaping her lips. He squeezed her hand, grounding both of them. "Whatever they did to us, whatever they took, it's not gone. We're still here. We're still us." She closed her eyes, pressing her forehead to his. "They tried to erase me, Jason. They tried to erase you from me." Her voice broke, a sob threatening to escape. "But you're still here. I feel you, every time I close my eyes." The ship's comm crackled, shattering the fragile intimacy. Static hissed, then resolved into a gravelly voice, urgent, familiar. "This is Drake. I have what you need. Dock at Bay 9. Both of you, bring the fragments. Your neural patterns are broadcasting like a beacon." The signal dissolved in static, the words hanging in the charged air. Kira's head snapped up, eyes wide, the old fear warring with something sharper. Determination. Her tail lashed behind her, pupils narrowing to fierce slits. She released Jason's hand, rising in one fluid, predatory motion, and crossed to the viewport. The starlight painted her markings in shifting gold, highlighting the tension that ran through every muscle. Jason stood and joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at him, jaw set, the vulnerability of minutes ago burning away in the face of new purpose. "Drake," she said, testing the name. "I know him. He was with us, before." Her brow furrowed as memories surfaced, her tail twitching in agitation. "He's the only one who tried to help when the council turned against us." Jason nodded, recalling flashes of the same broad-shouldered figure in a lab coat, eyes haunted by secrets and fear. "If he says he can help, we have to trust him. But we bring everything, every fragment, every memory. No more running." Kira's lips curled in a fierce smile, the first genuine spark he'd seen since the archive. "No more running," she echoed, her voice low and resolute. She turned, searching the cramped alcove for her armor and weapons. Jason moved to the locker, retrieving the data shards and the battered satchel containing the Helion files. Their hands brushed as he passed her the satchel, electricity arcing between them. She hissed softly, the contact sending a visible tremor down her spine. Her breath quickened, pulse fluttering at her throat. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice pitched low, afraid the spell might break. Kira looked at him, the fire in her eyes undimmed. "I've been waiting for this moment since they took you. Since they made me forget." She slipped on her gauntlets, the armor closing around her with a metallic click. "Whatever comes, we face it together." He couldn't help but smile, the warmth of her presence filling the void inside him. "Together," he agreed. A sudden rush of images flickered behind his eyes. Kira's laughter, her fierce protection, the two of them running hand in hand through corridors wreathed in alarms, promises whispered in the dark. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of her crimson hair behind her ear. She leaned into the touch, eyes fluttering shut, a soft, contented sigh slipping from her lips. "Jason," she said, voice trembling with anticipation, "do you remember what you promised me the night before they took us?" He hesitated, piecing together the fragments. "I promised I'd find you, no matter what." She smiled, fierce and beautiful. "You kept your promise." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Kira straightened, armor gleaming, tail flicking with renewed energy. She shouldered the satchel, brushed her scar with a grimace of pain, and turned to the hatch. Jason followed, heart pounding. The ship's corridor felt different now, alive with purpose, electric with possibility. He could feel the erased parts of himself straining to the surface, memories pressing against the dam the Council had built. Every heartbeat made him more certain. What had been taken was fighting its way back. Kira moved ahead, leading with predatory grace, every line of her body singing with anticipation and fury. Jason caught her hand as they reached the airlock. The contact was electric, surging through them both. Her breath caught, her pulse a visible flutter beneath her skin. "We get our memories back," Jason said, "and then we make them pay." Kira nodded, her smile fierce, tail twitching with anticipation. "There will be justice," she promised, voice ringing with conviction. The ship's engines powered up, their thrum echoing the beat of two hearts, defiant, unbroken, and finally, together. Someone had stolen their past, but it was returning, piece by piece, with every step they took toward the unknown. Drake's info booth was wedged into a corridor that pulsed with the desperate heartbeat of the city's underbelly, a ragged artery of flickering neon, solvent stench, and the electric tang of broken promises. On one side, a cybernetics chop shop glimmered with discarded synth limbs and half-awake prosthetic eyes. On the other, a gene splicer's den throbbed with biohazard warnings and the muted groans of failed experiments. Between them, Drake's booth squatted like a parasite, armored in rusted alloys, shielded by static fields, and bristling with antennas. Inside, 4 mechanical arms danced over a skein of holographic data streams, twitching and weaving as Drake's compound eyes flicked ceaselessly from screen to screen. His voice was a rasp, modulated by rebreathers and old wounds. "Neural resonance, off the scale," he muttered, glancing up as Jason and Kira stepped inside, the pressure door sealing behind them with a hiss. Quantum imprints, human, signatures flagged as extinct. His mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. Jason moved closer, tension in every line of his body. Kira followed, her gaze locked on Drake, tail flicking with wary impatience. The data streams coiled around their heads, threads of light probing, analyzing. Jason leaned in, shoulder brushing Kira's, the barest graze of armor against armor. The world fractured. It was a shattering, a splitting of time and self. Memory flooded in, unstoppable. Jason saw Kyra in chains, her hair matted with blood, the metallic tang thick in the air. Amber eyes, wild with terror and hope, found his across a slaver's hold. He felt the weight of a plasma rifle in his hands, the recoil biting his shoulder as he fought through her captors. The sound she made, raw, broken, beautiful, when he cut her free. Her hands, trembling as she touched his face, leaving smears of blood on his cheek. He remembered carrying her, both of them half dead, through corridors that burned with blaster fire and screams. Kira doubled over, claws digging into the battered counter as her own memories returned with violent clarity. The garden, a riot of blue blossoms glowing in the night, Jason's gentle hands tending wounds at her side, the way he looked at her as though she was made of starlight and hope. His voice, low and reverent, promising to keep her safe. She straightened slowly, the certainty of who she was blazing in her golden eyes. She reached for him, hand tracing the line of his jaw, fingers trembling. Jason caught her hand, their palms meeting. The last walls fell. They remembered it all. The asteroid fields, the adrenaline of escape, the first time she laughed after her rescue, the startled joy in his eyes. A kiss beneath alien moons, her tail wrapped around his waist as she whispered that she would never let go. Two souls, royalty and outcast, enemies by birth, lovers by choice, united against the world. Then the betrayal. Guards in royal colors, her brother's men, rushed them, neural suppressors clamped to their temples. Her screams echoed through the memory, sharp and bright as lightning. Jason's blood on the deck, pooling at her feet as he fought to reach her. She saw his face as they dragged her away, agony and fury burning in his eyes. Her claws extended now, tail lashing the air with helpless rage. Jason's hand found the scar at his temple, the matching one to hers. 5 years, he whispered, the truth slamming into him with all the force of a supernova. They stole 5 years from us. Kira's eyes glistened with unshed tears. They tried to erase everything, she said, voice shaking. But they failed. Drake watched them, his mechanical limbs pausing in their ceaseless dance. He tilted his head, curiosity and something like respect reflected in his multifaceted gaze. You're not who they say you are, he rasped. You're something more. Kira turned to Jason, resolve hardening her features. She rose to her full height, stepped into him, and kissed him, desperate, grieving, and filled with the fierce love that memory had tried to bury. Her tail coiled around his leg, anchoring him to her, and his arms crushed her close, as if he could hold them both together by sheer force of will. They broke apart only when breath became a necessity, foreheads pressed together, the world reduced to the space between them. No words were needed. Everything that mattered was there, in the touch and the tears and the iron promise that none of this would be forgotten again. Drakey broke the silence, swiveling a display toward them. You wanted answers. Here they are. Jason and Kira turned, hands still entwined. Drake's files unfolded in a flurry of cold light. Payment ledgers, transmission logs, neural blueprints. Synapse Dynamics, a name that seared itself into Jason's mind. Memory engineers paid obscene sums by House Australis. The authorization signature was unmistakable. Prince Kalen, Kyra's own brother. It was all a setup, Drake said, his voice flat. The slavers were hired, the rescue staged. Your capture, Jason's intervention, every piece orchestrated to justify your brother's next move. They needed a public crisis. You were the crisis. Kira's breath hitched, fury and heartbreak warring in her expression. He used me, used us. Drake nodded. Medical logs show what came next. Neural pathways rewritten, empathy dulled, pain tolerance increased. They turned you into a weapon and made you forget why. Kira stared at the records, jaw clenched. Her claws dug into her palm, drawing blood she didn't seem to feel. The blood on my hands, she whispered, horror dawning in her eyes. It wasn't always the enemy, was it? Jason caught her hand, thumb tracing circles across her palm. You're not alone, he said softly, voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. Whatever they made you do, Whatever they tried to change, it wasn't you. Not really. Kira's tail wound around his ankle, grounding her. Her breathing came fast, but she met his gaze, defiance simmering in her golden eyes. Drake's sensors flickered red. We have a problem. The moment your memories synced, Synapse Dynamics picked up your neural signatures. Containment teams are inbound. Jason's eyes narrowed, the old soldier's focus settling over him. How long? Minutes, at most, Drake replied, already tapping commands into the booth's console. They'll hit this sector hard. No witnesses, no survivors. Kira straightened, her fear replaced by a burning purpose. She pulled Jason closer, her voice a low growl. They took everything. I'm not running this time. Jason squeezed her hand, the contact electric. Neither am I. We do this together. Drake's arms retracted, the booth sealing itself behind them. Get moving. I'll cover your exit. Kira led the way, tail lashing with anticipation, claws flexed and ready. Jason followed, sidearm drawn, every sense on high alert. The city's underbelly was alive with danger, but for the first time in 5 years, they were whole. Together, memory and love restored, rage and hope twined like roots. The sirens began to wail, echoing down the labyrinthine corridors. Jason and Kira exchanged a look. No fear now, only fierce determination. Whatever came for them next, they would face it side by side. The hatch blew open with a scream of tortured metal and a flash of blinding red light. Corporate enforcers stormed into Drake's booth, armor gleaming as their visors swept the cramped shadows, weapons raised. The air thrummed with the pulse of approaching death, but Kira was already moving, nothing more than a shadow loosed into chaos. Her blade flickered in the crimson haze, slashing through synth alloy plating, slicing down the first soldier before he could fire. Jason's body moved in perfect counterpoint. He dropped into a shooter's crouch as Kira leapt, her momentum carrying her from body to body, each movement a precise arc of violence. Her tail lashed, tripping a soldier whose pulse rifle tracked Jason's chest. The man stumbled. Jason's knife flashed and found the exposed gap beneath the helmet, hot blood splattering across his gloves. Kira spun, eyes alight with battle fury and the wild joy of fighting at Jason's side. She vaulted from the fallen soldier's back, landing behind another enforcer. Her claws raked down his visor, screeching sparks across the glass, shredding circuitry and sending the man reeling. The tight quarters worked in their favor, the enemy bottlenecked by the narrow entry and Drake's static defenses funneling them into kill zones. There was no room to retreat, no time to regroup. Jason's shots cracked through the chaos, precise, controlled. Every round threaded the space between Kira's movements, trust woven into the milliseconds that separated her leaps from his bullets. They moved as one, each anticipating the other, their bond honed by pain and memory, and something deeper still. A pulse rifle swung up behind Jason, its blue core whining as it powered for a kill shot. Kira saw it first. She slid, blade extended, deflecting the bolt with a sizzling hiss, her free elbow crushing the attacker's throat. Jason rolled behind cover, shards of shattered metal raining down. Kira vaulted over him, landing in a crouch atop 2 startled soldiers. Her predatory grin was feral, gleaming fangs bared as she drove her knee into one helmet, then twisted to disarm the other. "Stay down!" she barked, not even glancing at Jason. She knew he'd listen, knew he'd cover her. Jason's world narrowed to the rhythm of combat, every sound and flash magnified. Kira's tail swept another soldier's legs from beneath him. Jason's knife was there, finding the exposed neck. They fought without hesitation, every strike vengeance and release, every movement a defiant answer to the years stolen from them. A grenade clattered, rolling toward Jason's boots, flickering red light casting erratic shadows across the floor. He snatched it up, hurling it back through the breach. Kira dropped beside him, covering his head as the explosion painted the corridor in searing gold. The shockwave rattled the booth, Dust and debris rained down, but the enemy's screams were lost in the blast. More soldiers poured in, faces set in grim determination, but now they faced a pair reborn in fire and memory. Kira leapt from above, blade a blur, landing on a helmeted head before driving her claws through the chest plate. Jason's shots never missed, weaving through the melee, his trust in Kira absolute, his aim guided by her wild, graceful movement. A voice crackled in Jason's earpiece. Drake, patched in from a hidden console. Booth defenses are cycling down. You've got seconds, not minutes. We're almost clear, Jason shot back, ducking a wild swing, squeezing off 2 rounds into the attacker's knee joints. Kira's laughter, wild and alive, echoed through the chaos as she tackled 2 soldiers at once. Every fiber of her being sang with the fierce joy of freedom, of fighting at Jason's side, of vengeance unleashed after years in the dark. "You missed me," she called to Jason, her words a challenge and a promise. He grinned despite himself, chest tight with adrenaline. "Never again," he vowed, voice raw. The last soldier, battered and desperate, raised his weapon at Kira's exposed back. Jason saw the angle, time slowing. He flung his knife, the blade spinning end over end. It buried itself in the soldier's heart. The man fell without a sound. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of dying lights and the distant wail of alarms. Kira straightened, red hair wild around her face, amber eyes fixed on Jason. She was breathing hard, claws dripping blood, but there was a new calm in her gaze, the calm of a bond reforged in battle. They stood among the fallen, breathing as one, the wreckage of their past scattered at their feet. Drake's voice came again, urgent. "Go! I've wiped your tracks, but more will come. Take the proof. Run!" Jason gathered the data cores, shoving them into his satchel. Kira pressed a palm to his cheek, eyes bright with everything she couldn't say. They ran, bodies moving in tandem, slipping past corpses and shattered armor, through the fractured labyrinth of the city's underbelly. Outside, the chaos faded into a desperate rush through alleys, neon and shadow swirling around them. Jason led the way, his every step guided by the promise of escape. Kira watched his back, blade ready, tail flicking as they dodged patrols and leapt over broken barricades. They reached the landing bay, Jason's battered ship gleaming like salvation in the darkness. The ramp lowered. Kira bounded aboard, turning to cover Jason's retreat. He fired a last warning shot at pursuing enforcers, then vaulted up the ramp as it slammed shut. The Marauder's grace roared to life beneath them. Jason punched in emergency launch protocols, engines screaming as they tore free of the gravity well. The city shrank behind them, swallowed by clouds of toxic haze and the promise of pursuit. In the cramped quarters, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a fragile, shining relief. Kira curled against Jason, her tail winding around his leg, head nestled on his chest. For the first time in years, her breathing was calm, untroubled by nightmares or the weight of loss. Jason wrapped his arms around her, pressing a kiss into her wild hair. She sighed, melting against him, her claws relaxed, and her eyes finally closing in peace. "We'll see this through. Together," he whispered, his words a vow echoing in the dim light. Kira's tail tightened, her voice a soft promise in the dark. Together, always. They lay there, fugitives with the truth, hearts beating in perfect synchrony as the ship slipped into the star-strewn dark. And for the first time since everything was stolen, hope flickered between them, bright and unbreakable. The derelict research hub drifted through the black void, a scarred relic in orbit above a dead world. Its hull was pitted with ancient micrometeor strikes, the station's running lights flickering on and off like dying stars. Jason's ship clamped onto a docking collar, hull groaning as atmospheres equalized, and the airlock cycled open with a wheeze. Inside, the corridors were silent. No voices, no footsteps, just the distant hum of life support systems clinging to function. The air was dry and cold, tinged with ozone and something sweetly metallic. Kira moved through the shadows like liquid dusk, her movements fluid and predatory, every step a ghost's caress against the deck. Jason followed at her side, eyes scanning the hollow silence, rifle ready, heart pounding with the knowledge that the answers they'd risked everything for lay somewhere in these haunted halls. At the main junction, Jason ducked into a cracked terminal alcove, fingers flying across grimy keys, sweat prickling beneath his armor. Kira ranged ahead, eyes sharp, tail flicking as she vanished into the darkness beyond. Systems are degraded, but the archive grid's intact, Jason murmured, blue light from the screens painting harsh lines across his face. Neural data cores are still shielded, no sign of tampering. Kira's voice crackled softly in his earpiece. North Wing is clear. No bodies, no survivors. Jason nodded, breath fogging in the chill. He hacked deeper, bypassing firewalls, searching for anything left untouched by Synapse's erasure protocols. At last, a directory flickered into view. Neural Archive. Unredacted. Found it, he breathed, relief warring with dread. Footsteps whispered behind him. Kira, slipping back into the weak glow of the console, her hands trembling as she set a cluster of data crystals on the surface. Her armor was smeared with dust and old oil, her eyes dark and distant. Jason. Her voice was a ghost, barely audible. There were others. He looked at her, confusion furrowing his brow. Kira pressed a crystal into his palm, her claws barely missing his skin. The terminal bloomed with data, columns of code names, rows of neural signatures, and blocks of cold clinical text. Hundreds of files, memory wipes, personality overwrites, neural conditioning schedules. Experiments designed to shatter human resistance, to break the soul and remake it in Synapse's image. Quantum patterns mapped, analyzed, erased, subjects discarded or repurposed. They did this to us, Kira whispered, voice cracking. But we're not the only ones. Jason, there were so many. He stared at the records, bile rising in his throat. God! Children, too. They wiped entire families. Kira shuddered, pressing closer, her body trembling with rage and grief. Jason's hand found hers, fingers entwining with desperate intimacy. Her breath hitched, tail brushing his leg, grounding her in the moment. The screens flickered, data scrolling by, but Jason saw only the glow of Kira's hair, the quickening rise and fall of her chest, the firelight flicker of her eyes. She turned in his arms, the console's glow catching the gold in her irises. Her hands cupped his face, thumbs brushing his cheekbones, 1,000 words spoken in that silent touch. He pressed his forehead to hers, the two of them breathing as one in the dead hush. Kira's voice was low, fierce. We survived. They tried to erase us, but they failed. Jason's hands slid to her waist, pulling her against him, armor scraping against armor. Kira's tail wrapped around his hips, her body fitting perfectly along his. She kissed him, desperate, aching, filled with 5 years of longing and loss and fury. Every movement was a promise, a reclamation of what they had been denied. Armor slid away, falling in slow, clattering pieces to the deck. Kira's skin was traced with old scars, half-faded marks that Jason remembered from another life. He ran his fingers over them, reverent, his lips finding her throat. She gasped, claws tracing gentle lines across his chest, her body arching into him. They sank to their knees amidst the data crystals and evidence of Synapse's crimes, lost in each other, building something new from the ruins. The station, for a few heartbeats, was no longer cold and dead, but alive with the heat of memory and need. When they parted, breathless and tangled together, the screens filled with new data, Synapse's true reach, dozens of hidden sites, thousands of victims, the full scope of a crime that stretched across worlds and years. Kira looked up, hair wild, lips swollen, eyes blazing with resolve. We end this, for them, and for us. Jason nodded, cold fury settling in his bones. They made one mistake. They left survivors. Suddenly, alarms shrieked, shattering the fragile peace. Warning glyphs strobed across every panel, multiple warships dropping out of orbit, weapons primed and locked. Heat signatures bloomed on the sensors, boarding pods launched, engines burning white-hot as they streaked toward the station. Jason cursed, shoving the data cores into his satchel. Defense grids offline, I'll try to buy us time. Kira was already moving, sliding into shadow by the door, her body coiled, eyes narrowed and hungry. Jason locked the terminal, flicked safeties off his rifle, and triggered the emergency lockdown. Bulkheads groaned as ancient servos struggled to obey. The first boarding pod slammed against the outer hull. Plasma torches hissed, slicing through meters of alloy. The hatch exploded inward, and 12 enhanced operatives stormed the corridor, taller, heavier, faces hidden behind mirrored masks. They moved as one, weapons sweeping. Kira erupted from the darkness, blade flashing. The first soldier fell, throat slit before he could fire. Another turned. Jason's rifle barked, rounds chewing through armor. Kira moved like lightning, claws catching a gun barrel, twisting it aside as she drove her knee into the attacker's chest. Her tail swept another's feet, dropping him for Jason's knife. These were no ordinary soldiers. They fought without fear, adapting quickly, tactics precise. But Kyra was relentless, a force of nature, beautiful and deadly, every movement a dance of vengeance. She vaulted over a downed enemy, blade biting deep, then spun to parry a strike aimed at Jason's back. Jason's hands moved with muscle memory, reloading, covering her flank. 3 left, he shouted, data transfer racing on the terminal behind him. Sirens blared, countdowns flickering, minutes left, if that. Kira leapt, taking 2 operatives at once, wild laughter spilling from her lips. Her armor was battered, one shoulder plate half melted, but her grin was pure challenge, daring the universe to try and take what she'd reclaimed. Jason dropped the last soldier with a trio of shots, smoke and ozone thick in the air. He spun, searching for Kira, relief flooding him as she appeared beside him, red hair wild, amber eyes blazing with the thrill of battle. They stood together in the ruins, the hub trembling around them, data still streaming. The fight was far from over, but for the first time they faced it as equals, as partners, as something indestructible. The hunt was only beginning. The Australis citadel gleamed under a violet dusk, spires catching the last gasps of sunlight, white stone and gold-veined crystal reflecting the colors of a fading world. In the shadow of its towers, Kira strode toward the throne room, her hair a banner of crimson fire, her gait unhurried and unafraid. Amber eyes blazed with purpose. Behind her, Jason moved in silence, letting her lead, every muscle ready, but his face set in unwavering trust. No guards dared block their way. The legends of the dead princess had already run ahead, carried on the frightened whispers of the palace. The throne room doors parted with a thunderous resonance. Prince Kalen rose from the dais, hands trembling as he clutched the arms of the throne he had stolen, his eyes widened, face blanching beneath the cold, perfect light. "You're supposed to be dead," Kalen managed, voice brittle with disbelief and fear. Kira didn't stop, her claws extended with a subtle click, tail swaying behind her in slow, hypnotic arcs. The guards at Kalen's side shrank away, uncertain where their loyalties truly lay. Jason lingered at the threshold, gaze locked on Kira, trusting her rage, her justice. She stopped before Kalen, close enough that her shadow fell across him. "You made me a weapon," Kira said, her voice cold as interstellar ice. Holographic displays burst to life in the air around them, financial records, neural protocols, and the damning curves of Kalen's signature flickering in ghostly blue. Evidence, undeniable and absolute, shimmered for all to see. Kalen's composure cracked, sweat beading his brow. Kira, Her blade flashed, resting at his throat. A thin line of blood welled beneath the steel, and Kalen froze. Kira's tail curled, ready for the killing blow, but she didn't move. Her gaze was hard, merciless. "Say my name," she commanded, voice low, every word a blade. Kalen's mouth worked, his eyes darting for exits, for guards, for hope. "Kira," he stammered, then more quietly, "Sister." Jason stepped forward, voice steady. "She loved you once, Kalen. Before the wipe, she trusted her brother." Kira's jaw trembled, grip tightening, claws dimpling Kalen's skin. For a fleeting instant, she saw a boy who held her hand in the moonlit gardens, who wove fire lilies into her hair, who promised he'd protect her always. That boy was gone. Kalen's voice turned brittle, desperation leaking through his bravado. "I did what I had to. House Astralis needed strength. The galaxy is changing. Humans—" Kira's blade pressed deeper, her face inches from his. "Humans frighten you," she hissed. "Because you can't erase what matters. You can kill the body, rewrite the mind, but not the heart. Not love." Kalen's eyes widened with understanding, the calculation in them failing. Too late, he realized the weapon he'd forged had remembered love, and chosen her own target. Kira stepped back, leaving Kalen bleeding and shamed, the truth of his crimes rippling through the room on a tide of holograms. Guards lowered their weapons. The balance of power had shifted with one name spoken and one drop of blood shed. Jason joined Kira at the threshold, brushing his fingers along her arm, grounding her. Together, they turned their backs on the throne. Da. Far above, Director Vare's corporate fortress orbited a burning star, its armor gleaming with the ill-gotten profits of Synapse Dynamics. The fortress bristled with weaponry, defense grids spinning like a mechanized halo. Yet even here, amid all this might, the corridors held shadows and infiltrators. Kira and Jason slipped through the underbelly, moving like ghosts. Jason mapped patrol routes, disabling cameras with a twist of his wrist, his memory for security routines sharpened by pain and vengeance. Kira glided ahead, tail barely whispering along the walls, her eyes always searching, always calculating. They bypassed lasers, danced around patrols, and reached the executive suite, a gilded prison dripping with luxury. Yet beneath the gold and glass, Jason smelled something else. Antiseptic, ozone, the coppery reek of pain. The tools of neural torture lurked here, hidden beneath silk and crystal. Inside, Director Vare waited. He was tall, thin, face sculpted by arrogance and the certainty of power. Holographic data streams swirled around him, a web of numbers and secrets. He did not rise as they entered. He merely lifted a glass, smiling coldly. "You've caused quite a disruption," Vare intoned. His eyes glimmered with predatory calculation. "Do you think this ends with me? Synapse has 50 more sites. For every human who remembers, we erase 3 more." Jason kept his rifle steady, voice even. "You're running out of time, Vare." "The archives are everywhere now." Kira's tone was death itself, calm, precise. "You think we're alone." She walked to the window, claws flexing, blade gleaming in the star's fire. "You think you can erase us, but you forgot one thing." Her claws shattered the window in a shower of diamond shards, the sudden vacuum howling as alarms blared. At the same instant, her blade slashed through the suite's control panels, severing the data streams. Jason moved, pinning Vare with a glare, buying Kira the seconds she needed. Kira's voice echoed through the fortress comms as she uploaded every last file, financials, protocols, lists of victims, into the galactic network. "The truth is free now, Vare. Your empire is already ash. Vare lunged for an escape panel. Jason's rifle barked once, sending him scrambling back, eyes wide. You lost, Jason spat. Then Kira's tail snapped around Jason's waist, pulling him with her as the window exploded outward. The vacuum yanked them into the burning dusk, wind roaring. Docking clamps snared their ship, pulling them in as the fortress dissolved in chaos behind them. Hours later, every network in the galaxy lit up with the evidence. News feeds screamed the truth. Synapse dynamics had fallen. Sites went dark. Staff vanished. The old order crumbling under the weight of exposed horror. The age of forgetting was over. In the gentle hush of their ship, Kira curled against Jason, head nestled on his chest, tail wrapped around his leg. Her armor was gone, her breathing finally peaceful, the war within her stilled. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was deep and easy, filled with the knowledge of all they had survived and all they had reclaimed. "What now?" Kira asked at last, her voice soft, hope flickering for the first time in years. Jason smiled, squeezing her hand, their fingers entwining with a certainty that no machine could ever erase. "Now we remember." And as the stars wheeled outside, their memories, painful, joyful, indelible, became the foundation for everything that would come next. Our story ends here. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.